Hey there, crazies! The anime kicks off with the city basking in the beautiful sunset. We're then taken inside a room where a single-use lies in a trash can. On the bed, we see a couple, and the girl gets up to get dressed, looking quite unhappy. We hear the young man exclaim, "I just lost my..." The story then follows our MC Natsuo as he seeks out his friend Fujii to recount his recent encounter. Natsuo eagerly shares all the juicy details of how he ended up sleeping with a girl he had just met. The following morning, Natsuo and his buddies were discussing a professor who was accused of misconduct when a young woman named Hina pops up out of nowhere and playfully spanks one of them. It's apparent that everyone has a crush on her, but she doesn't take them seriously. And why would she? They call her Hina-sensei. Later on, our MC and his friends attend a reunion at a restaurant with some girls named Rika, Mina, Kane, and a shy, short, blue-haired girl named Ru. While they're outside the room, Natsuo asks Ru if she's enjoying the event, and to his surprise, she invites him to replace alone right then and there. At Ru's place, she gets straight to the point and asks Natsuo if he wants to have sex with her, since he's a good guy and inexperienced. She just wants to see what all the fuss is about. Later that night, after their encounter, they say their goodbyes, and Ru doesn't appear to be happy or sad. She just seems uninterested in what happened. Ru then declares that if they meet again, they should pretend to be complete strangers. The next scene shows Natsuo on the rooftop, jotting down something in his notebook, which happens to be a novel. Hina joins him, and she reminisces about how they first met on that very rooftop a year ago. She appears a bit uneasy but refuses to talk about it. Natsuo feels conflicted about being treated like a kid. Later, he heads back home, but his dad is too engrossed on the phone to pay any attention to him. Natsuo struggles to write anything in his notebook. The next day, we find ourselves back at the rooftop with Hina and Natsuo. Hina is in tears, but she refuses to talk about her problems, calling them adult problems, which irritates Natsuo. He snaps at her, demanding that she stops calling him a teenager. Just before things get even more heated, Hina's phone rings and Natsuo falls silent. After returning home, Natsuo thinks about Hina and Ru when his dad suddenly appears, wanting to talk about something important. It's been 10 years since Natsuo's mom passed away, and his dad wants to get married again. Natsuo doesn't have any objections, but there's a shocking twist. The fiancé is arriving any minute. And just as he says that, the doorbell rings. Natsuo opens the door to find Hina and Ru standing there with a mystery woman. Natsuo and the girls look shocked, and he almost faints. Moments later, in the kitchen, Mrs. Hachibana introduces the girls as her daughters. Natsuo asks her why she loves his father. She explains that her ex-husband cheated on her, and she thought she would never trust anyone again. But Natsuo's father is an honest man who won her trust. Later, they all sit down to eat some sushi, and Hina starts drinking beer, joking about how it's a shame Natsuo isn't old enough to drink. Our MC excuses himself to go to the toilet, where Ru confronts him, but fortunately, nothing bad happens. Afterward, while doing the dishes, Natsuo suggests to his dad that he should marry Mrs. Hachibana. His father replies with joy that he has bought a house, and they are all moving in next week. In the next scene, Natsuo updates Fujii about all the latest events. His friend acknowledges that it's a very complicated situation and advises Natsuo to drop his obsession with Hina. Days later, Natsuo and his dad are moving boxes into their new house. The Hachibana family is already inside, and Hina bumps into Natsuo. She asks him to stop being so formal, but still treats him like a kid. A little annoyed, Natsuo begins to carry a heavy box when he encounters Ru upstairs. Seeing that he looks clearly embarrassed, she scolds him and demands that he forgets anything happened and starts acting normally around her. During dinner, Natsuo has a flashback of his afternoon with Ru, and Hina enters the room wearing only a towel on her chest. She apologizes and explains that it's just an old habit that she needs to drop. After that, she looks for a beer and starts watching TV next to a clearly half-embarrassed, half-aroused Natsuo. Later on, both parents go to sleep and Hina falls asleep on the couch, revealing her figure. Natsuo notices it and tries to wake her up, but he cannot succeed due to the 6 cans of beer she drank. Hina mumbles about trying to be a good sister in Natsuo, and he only thinks about kissing her. He slowly moves toward her, but suddenly Ru opens the door, leaving Natsuo in total shock. Surprisingly, Ru doesn't make a fuzz and just drags her sister to her bedroom. She even exclaims that it's all her sister's fault. The next morning, the MC wakes up late and goes to school all untidy. His friends tell him that a beautiful new girl has arrived in the class next door, and they all go to see her. It turns out to be Ru, who tells him that she forgot his food. Natsuo stops her and takes her outside, telling her not to talk about their sibling relationship at school. Ru thinks he doesn't want to talk to her at school. Poor girl. Later, Natsuo's friends ask him what happened the other day when he and Ru went off alone at the mixer party, and he says that nothing happened. They don't ask any more questions. Later, Natsuo meets Hina and tells her they shouldn't talk about their sibling relationship at school, and she agrees. He also asks her if she remembers anything from the previous day, and Hina asks if they kissed, but he tells her nothing happened. Hina says she'll be more careful next time and leaves with a wink. During the class break, Natsuo approaches Ru, who was eating alone in the classroom. She tells him that even though many girls approached her at first, they slowly left her, and he realizes that she is socially awkward. Ru accepts this and says she can't be like her sister. Natsuo helps her by practicing with her to be more sociable, but Ru is difficult to deal with. They begin to argue, but it's funny and sarcastic, and the girls around them decide to be her friends. Natsuo smiles happily over this. At home, Natsuo accidentally opens the door while Ru is bathing. He quickly closes it and apologizes, but she says it's okay because he's already seen her before. She just wants to thank him for today. Natsuo says it's okay, and that he'll be back later, but she insists he comes in just this once. She asks him about what happened last night with Hina. At first she thought he was a womanizer, but now she knows he's not. She wonders if he was trying to cheer her up because he knows what's going on with her boyfriend. Natsuo says he's seen that she's going through a tough time but doesn't seem to know anything else. Ru just leaves. The next day, the parents say they will be leaving because their marriage papers are ready and they will leave the two kids alone. Hina says she'll take care of everything. Later on, at dinner time, several dishes served at the table look delicious. Hina says Ru made almost all of it. Natsuo tastes it and says it's incredible. Hina tells him that she only made a little appetizer. Natsuo says those are good too. Later, Ru goes to bed while the two stay in the living room talking. Natsuo seems a bit uneasy, and Hina tells him he can tell her anything. He asks her what happened with her boyfriend. Hina says he doesn't have to worry about her and should ask about him instead. Natsuo says he doesn't like her curly hair, but Hina likes it and puts her hair in front of his face, making him blush. She almost slips, but he catches her just in time. Suddenly, they're interrupted by a call from Hina's boyfriend. She answers and goes out for a moment. Since it was already 11 o'clock, the MC began to worry because Hina hadn't returned. He went to check on her, but suddenly found her entering the house looking very sad. He grabs her and asks her what happened. The two stood there without saying anything while someone rang the doorbell. Then Rui appeared and went to open the door. It was just their parents. They arrived with a cake, but Hina didn't say anything and just left. The next day, the MC goes to Fumiya's workplace, a cafe called Woman or the Lover, where we meet his friend's eccentric boss who gets angry if they don't call him Marie. Since Natsuo looked worried, Fumiya asks him what is going on, and he explains that Hina went out to talk with her boyfriend and came back very sad, as if they had argued. After listening to him, his friend tells him it's jealousy as he has experienced the same thing with all the girls who enter the cafe. As they leave, the chubby guy recognizes one of the women who came yesterday that had an affair. The MC looks, and it was Hina. When he gets home, he goes to her room to ask if she's involved with someone else's husband, as his friend overheard her talking about it. Although Hina denies it at first, she eventually admits to it and asks what's the big deal. Disappointed, he asks her if these were the adult problems that she didn't want him to mention. Hina tells him to stay out of her life. The MC interrupts her with a kiss, and Hina responds for a few seconds, but then slaps him and pushes him away. Natsuo apologizes, but Hina throws herself at him on the bed and notices that the MC is scared, so she tells him, "See, you're not ready yet. You have the look of a scared child." Oof. After this, the MC goes to his room and cries. The next day, Natsuo's father shouts in despair at a note. His son has left home. The parents think it's because of their marriage. At the same time, we see that the MC is at Fumiya's house. Fumi feels a little guilty for telling him what happened yesterday, but the MC tells him that he's the only one to blame. After a little fight, the chubby guy tells the MC to write his novel while he's there, which he does. Later, Natsuo opens the curtain and sees Ru walking in the rain. He goes downstairs and asks her what she's doing there. She asks if she can stay over there. But then Fumiya's mother arrives. Ru mentions that she's her sister, and they both go inside. When Fumiya returns, he gets upset to see another person, but then his little sister arrives and asks if the girl is his brother's girlfriend, to which he responds very seriously, "Yes, that's funny." Well, the thing is that Ru says that she heard her sister talking to that guy a while ago. She suspected that something was going on and asked her if she was dating a married man. Hina responded, "Have you ever been hugged by someone you love?" But Ru said no. Fumiya tells Natsuo that's why she slept with him. Ru gets upset because he told her, but since she wasn't going to school at that time, she doesn't give it much importance. Fumiya tells them they can't stay there forever, and Natsuo says he wants Hina to break up with that guy. So since they both want the same thing, they decide to make a plan. They both return home and find their parents in the dark, about to sign divorce papers. They believe that Natsuo was not in agreement with their marriage, so he clarifies that it was not true. Suddenly, Hina comes out and starts crying, apologizing. The next day, the MC meets Hina and they greet each other, but he passes by and goes down to the kitchen and says to Ru, "Let's get on with the plan." At school, the kids began to work on their shenanigans. After school, both of them watch over Hina, as she was going to supposedly meet the married man today. Hina goes to a bar alone to drink for 4 hours and then goes to a show from which she came out giggling. They continue to keep an eye on her for several days, but nothing happens. After the total defeat, Fujii says there is only one option left. While Hina is taking a shower, the two of them grab her cell phone. Ru wants to feign her sister's voice, call the man, end their relationship, but she was bad at communication, gets nervous, and ends up not saying anything, hanging up twice. Both kids go to Fumi's cafe, feeling sad, when suddenly Hina arrives with her boyfriend. She was shocked to see them and told her boyfriend that they were her sister and stepbrother. However, the MC goes berserk, stands up and yells, "Break up with teacher." He even grabs the man by the collar, and Marie has to intervene to separate the two guys. Everyone sits down at the table, feeling calmer. The man introduces himself as Shu, 34 years old, married, and childless, who started dating Hina 2 years ago, and he was the one who invited her out first. He asked the two of them if they could accept him if he divorced. Natsuo said no, as he was someone who made Hina cry, thus he couldn't be good for her. Shu apologized to Hina, as he didn't know he was making her suffer so much, but he asked her to wait a little longer and started to confuse her with words. This almost made the MC explode, but instead of doing anything, Ru stepped forward and threw water in his face and ran out of there, with the MC following behind her. Natsuo catches up with Ru and tells her that he would have hit him, but luckily she threw water instead. The MC says they should teach him a lesson, but Ru replies that she never wants to see him again and starts to cry with anger, and Natsuo comforts her. Meanwhile, Hina walks with the man. He tells her that he realizes that Natsuo likes her. She says no, that they were just siblings. So before leaving, she says they should stop seeing each other. Shu hugs her and asks her what are her feelings. The next day, Natsuo notices that this day was marked on his dad's calendar. Hina says she's going shopping, but Ru declines. The MC also rejects her, since he always goes to visit the grave of his deceased mother on this particular day. In a flashback, we understand that the mother was chronically ill, that she couldn't see her son a lot, and they used to cry a lot. It has been 10 years since her passing. Later, at the graveyard, Hina and Ru appear with gifts they bought. Hina explains to Natsuo that she ended her relationship with Shu, as this man didn't want to divorce his wife. She prioritized her siblings' feelings. They all go to pray and pay respects to Natsuo's mother. The next day, at breakfast, everything seems to have returned to normal. They even look like a normal family. While Natsuo walks with Ru on their way to school, he mentions he's happy that everything has been solved. However, when she asks him why he left the house in such a hurry, Natsuo runs away to avoid answering. Upon arriving at school, a girl named Momo approaches Ru, giving her a bunny doll that she made herself. Later, in class, Ru's friends see the doll and throw it into the trash, warning her to not hang out with her because she's a... Ru stands up and picks up the bunny, saying that even if it is true, she will decide whether or not to talk to her. Ru and Momo meet later, and the new girl has already made a doll of Ru. She asks if they can go home together and stop to eat ice cream on the road. Ru asks her if she has experience with boys, and she says she has dated around 30, but usually they leave her or become... Unfortunately, having so many boyfriends made her not have any friends, which is why she wanted to get to know Ru. They seem to have fun together and even go to some places like good friends. Sometime later in the library, they bump into Natsuo. Momo approaches him as soon as they are introduced and takes an interest in what he's reading. They walk home together, and the MC manages to save Momo from an irresponsible biker. After that, he goes his own way, but when Momo is alone with Ru, she asks if Natsuo has a girlfriend. Ru says that he doesn't and that she doesn't care if she likes him. Momo then asks Ru to help her go out with him since she wants to fall in love. Ru thinks over these events while taking a bath. The next day on their way home, Ru goes straight to her house and tells the boys she has a fever. Natsuo goes after her, but on the way he meets Momo, who gives away her number so they can chat and have a date. The MC goes home and takes care of Ru, who is feverish. She tells him to go see Momo, but he can't because he has to be with his sister. Ru asks if he likes Momo, but he doesn't answer. Then she says she asked because Momo is in love with him and wants their help, but it makes her feel uneasy to think about it. Ru doesn't get better, so Natsuo has to take care of her and bring down her fever with... Yes. Some hours later, the whole family comes back and they thank him for being helpful. His father was pretty happy that they were getting along in such a good way. The next day, the MC meets Momo and apologizes for not calling her because he doesn't have that chat app. Momo is glad because that means that he doesn't hate her. Afterward, Natsuo's friends tell him that Momo is an easy girl, that it's better not to get involved with her. During recess, Momo invites Natsuo to eat some food she prepared. He asks if she treats everyone like this, but she says she only does it for those she likes because if she doesn't do everything in her power, she will regret it later. The MC understands her words and tells her there is something he has wanted to say and do for a long time, but he can't. Momo empathizes and tries to kiss him, takes his hand, and invites him to her house. Now in her no parents around house, she begins to undress him to do you-know-what. The MC thinks that this will help him get over Hina. Suddenly, he receives a message from Rizz asking what they should have for dinner since everyone will be arriving late. Momo tells him that she envies him because her parents don't get along. The two continue to undress each other, but when he unbuttons her shirt, the MC notices some cuts on her wrist. She tries to justify them by saying they're old, but he gets up and goes to buy something for them to eat together, offering to always be there if she wants someone to eat with. Momo starts to cry, saying that many guys left her when they saw her scars, but he's the only one who said something like that. After eating, she tells him she wants to make their relationship official, but the MC says no, that they should think about it more. Momo is left feeling a little dissatisfied but happy. Days later, Natsuo was on the rooftop getting inspired for his novel when he encountered Kariya-sensei. Since Kariya-sensei was a language and literature teacher and saw Natsuo holding a novel, he just teases him and leaves him alone. A little later, Rizz encounters him and asks him to help her find a club after school. She also mentions that Momo was happy because they had eaten together, but she got jealous because Natsuo cooked for her. Thus, she had to eat alone on that day. Natsuo liked the expression Rizz made. During class, Natsuo's friends asked him to do something fun, but he declined since he had to accompany Rizz to look for clubs. They all decide to visit women's clubs together, but leave the two alone after seeing all the ones with pretty sporty girls. Both entered the literature club, where Natsuo grabs a book from his favorite author since there was no one around. Sometime later, when Natsuo goes to return it, he saw Kariya-sensei apparently kissing a girl. He tries to leave, but Kariya-sensei catches him. It turned out to be a misunderstanding as the girl was only removing an eyelash from his professor's eye. Kariya-sensei approached Natsuo and tells him that he now belongs to the literature club since he took a book without permission. The girl introduces herself as Ashihara, and Kariya-sensei says they could recruit more members for the club by distributing flyers. Natsuo tells Rizz what happened, and that they were not yet an official club since they only had one member. After promoting the club, Natsuo went to see Ashihara and noticed that she was speaking very quietly and had not distributed a single flyer. He took the flyers and asked her to help him distribute them. She called herself useless, but Natsuo responded that everyone is good at something. The next day, Natsuo found a note from his teacher in his locker, saying they had activities in the club that day. When they arrived, the teacher asked if Natsuo had ever written anything, and he answers that he had written a romance before. The teacher guessed that it was an unrequited love story and suggests that the students kiss each other since they had no experience. Ashihara agreed immediately, but Natsuo became very nervous. He readies himself to kiss her, but then he stops and says he couldn't do it like that. The teacher says it was okay, and at least he got to know Natsuo a little better. He asked Natsuo to let him read a little of what he had written. At home, Natsuo was writing when Rizz said she would join the literature club since she was interested in writing novels. However, the next day she came with Momo, who also wanted to join. Now there were two new members. The president was happy, but Rizz felt a little jealous after seeing Natsuo and Momo sharing similar tastes and getting along well. On Sunday, Rizz went to the bar where Natsuo works to tell the boss that she had been feeling a pain in her stomach lately, something she had never felt before, and sometimes it scares her because she feels like she's not herself. The boss tells her that when he was the second in command of the Yakuza 10 years ago, he met someone he fell in love with, so surely this is what she is feeling. Sometimes feelings are accompanied by pain, but she shouldn't be afraid. She should just let herself go and accept what her heart feels. At home, when Natsuo arrived, only Hina was there. She invited Natsuo to go out with her alone next Sunday. The day came and they left with Hina driving, who also mentioned having a motorcycle license. They arrived at a restaurant where they were mistaken for a couple. They had a great time in many places and ended up going to the seaside. Natsuo suggested they go for a dip in the water, but Hina said she was no longer a child to do such things. However, he said that she was still a child and took off his shoes. Then Hina apologized for calling him a child earlier. Natsuo asked her how she could have had a romance when her mother had the same experience with his father. She told him that many years ago, Shusan was her teacher. In school, one of her friends was in love with a boy who suddenly spoke to Hina. All the girls started talking badly about her in the bathroom, saying that she was a spoiled brat and so on, while she listened from outside. She started crying in a classroom where Shu appeared with a little toy to comfort her. She felt better after talking to him, so she visited him almost daily and fell in love with him. A few years later, when she was in her 4th year of college, she was excited to see him again, and the best part was when he asked her out. That's why she didn't think twice. Natsuo realized that he had judged her without knowing her story, but he might have done the same thing if he had been in her shoes. Suddenly, he gave her his novel, saying that he had finished it, and that he had been inspired by her to create the main character. He admitted that he was in love with her. Hina was speechless for a moment, but she composed herself and asked if he meant as a couple. Natsuo said yes, and she agreed but asked him to keep it a secret from their parents and Ru. She took his hand and led him to the sea. Hina replied that doing this would be like committing suicide, so she supposed that he was ready for it. He looked at her helplessly and she said they should just remain siblings. Natsuo hugged her. They arrived home with different clothes that Hina bought, telling their parents that they got wet in the sea. In her room, Hina cried while reading his work, and later Natsuo saw that she had written thank you in it. Days passed, and one day while Natsuo was in his room, Ru came in and sat next to him. She said they didn't kiss when they had sex. Natsuo replied that it was an act somewhat special to him. So Ru asked why he wanted to kiss his sister, whether she was special to him. He said it was because he had never seen an older girl like her before. And well, yes, he goes for it and kisses Ru. Ru said she might like him because she felt more at ease after kissing him, and she wanted him to feel the same way. Then she left. Natsuo thought to himself, how can I make the same mistake? The next day, Natsuo goes to his club and meets Ashihara, with whom he talks about the works that she had written, and the MC feels very interested. Suddenly, Momo and Ru arrive, who become somewhat jealous because these two always walk alone. Natsuo mentions that the club's officialization will be coming soon, so they have to write something. Kiryu-sensei tells them to be careful not to neglect themselves because exams are approaching. The two brothers went to Hina's house to ask her to teach them, and although she did not want to at first, she eventually agreed. While reviewing their practices, Hina tells them that the MC is doing it wrong. Ru says he must be distracted thinking about the girl from the club, but he denies it and gets angry with her for saying that while blushing at the memory of almost kissing her before. Later, in his room, Natsuo thinks about this uncomfortable moment and wants to go to Hina's room to ask her something, but when he's about to knock, he hears noises. He peeks and sees that the teacher is... The worst part is that she mentions Shu's name, so Natsuo drops his notebook in shock. Hina notices and goes out to look for who it was, but luckily the MC hid well and she couldn't find him. The next day, Natsuo meets Hina, who tells him she stayed up all night studying and recommends that he not stay up too late because it could affect him. She leaves and the MC stays looking at her hand. The exams passed without problems, and luckily, all the club's students did well in them. The holidays are coming. During vacations, Natsuo was unable to talk to Hina because she was acting strange. He goes to school to borrow a novel for inspiration and asks Ru if she wants to go, but for some reason, she speaks to him dryly and tells him to go alone. She also mentions that someone stole her underwear. Natsuo goes to his school and is beaten up by a guy who has just arrived from Japan and will be in his class. This guy named Alex goes to eat with the MC at a restaurant where they discover that he is very bad with girls, but wants to appear experienced. The boss mentions that the police are looking for a thief. After eating, they see the thief running, so they chase after him and catch him. Ru has to go to the police station to verify if it was her garment. The American guy sees Ru and falls in love with her, asking the MC if he can introduce her to him. On the way, he began to wonder what he really felt hearing that question. Back at home, Hina found out what happened, but instead of reacting as before, she only tells the MC to be careful. He noticed that something had indeed changed. While washing the dishes, Natsuo tells Ru that his friend wanted to go out with her. She runs away because he knows that she likes him. Natsuo goes to his room with food and Ru asks him to apologize properly, so they kiss and Natsuo tries to go further, but Ru stops him. Hina sees them, comes out confused, and the MC goes after her, saying that it was a misunderstanding. Hina enters her room without listening and Ru goes after her. Ru tells her that she likes Natsuo, but Hina is against it because they are family. However, Ru doesn't care because they are not blood related. Hina says that their mother would be disappointed while Natsuo listens outside. The next day, the MC tells Alex that he was rejected, and he says that he will still achieve it. Seeing that Natsuo was worried, he tells him to talk about things. So the MC goes to Hina's room to apologize, and she tells him that she already knows. Ru told her everything and asks him if he likes her sister, but he says no. The next day, she tells her parents that she wants to move out, saying that it was her dream for a long time. Ru asks her if it's because of her, but Hina says no. Natsuo's father suggests that they go to the festival that is coming up before Hina leaves. On that day, the MC stays looking at Hina, who is beautiful. Ru asks Natsuo if he thinks that Hina is leaving because of them, and he says yes. She responds that they should wait for a while before continuing with the kisses. Suddenly, they see Ayano, the girl from the restaurant, with her little boy. The boss had also come to play a traditional drum. Hina separates from her parents to go enjoy the festival, saying that she'll call them later. She goes to catch fish, but her phone falls into the water, so she doesn't know how to contact them. Luckily, the MC appears and takes her to the forest to talk to her. He asks her if she's leaving because of what happened with Ru and him, and she says no. She reveals that she had been thinking about it for a while, and that it's just a coincidence. Natsuo tells her to stay, that he won't do anything with Ru anymore, and it'll be less obvious to their parents. However, Hina says no, that she's made her decision, and that it'll be good for them too. With the help of the boss and Ayano, they manage to catch her and calm her down so that she can face Natsuo, as she's an adult and that's what she should do. They leave them alone, and Hina confesses that the real reason she wants to move out is that she was jealous, more than being afraid of their parents finding out. She doesn't want her true feelings to surface, and at times she rejected him only because she was playing the role of an adult, which she finds very tiring. She would like to be more like Ru. The MC looks at her happily because it's the first time he hears her true feelings. They stay like that for a few moments. After this, they leave the forest, and despite Ru being nearby, they walk hand in hand without fear of anything. The following day, Natsuo is surprised when Hina tells him that she will still be moving out. She says that retracting her decision after announcing it to everyone would be strange. However, she tells Natsuo that he can come and visit her if he wants. Natsuo is overjoyed because this means that they can finally move forward in their relationship. Ru is feeling bored, so she goes to the library where she runs into Kariya-sensei and Shu, whom she looks at with hostility. Shu asks her not to look at him like that and explains that he hasn't contacted Hina since the last time they spoke, and that he would like to apologize properly. They go to their usual restaurant, and Shu explains that Kariya was his student. Ru orders the most expensive thing on the menu because Shu is paying, and he begins by saying that he and his wife were incompatible, which is why they separated. However, he assures Ru that he won't try to reconcile with Hina just because he's divorced. Ru asks him why not, and he responds that it would be selfish of him to do so. Shu tells Ru that if Hina says that she isn't moving out because of their argument, that it must be true, as Hina doesn't usually lie about these things. He suggests that Ru should go and talk to Hina. Ru goes to Hina's room and tearfully tells her that they have always been together, and she asks what she can do or change to make Hina stay. Hina kindly tells Ru that there's nothing she can do and that she wants to be free. Another day, Natsuo comes home and finds Hina's key and envelope in his room. Ru, who was watching him from behind, asks him what it is, and he tells her it's just a piece of trash. Natsuo helps Hina move out, and they all have dinner together at her new place. Natsuo's father comments that someday she will have to get married, which makes Natsuo think. The next day, Natsuo is still thinking about the key, so he decides to go and give Hina an answer and take a risk. But when he goes outside, he sees Ru standing in Hina's old room looking sad. She tells him that her sister isn't there anymore and she feels empty. However, she's also happy that he can be there for her, and she hugs him. Natsuo gently pushes her away and tells her that he will always be there for her, as her stepbrother. Later that day, Natsuo's father comes home and finds that Ru has cooked Natsuo's favorite dish, but Natsuo had already left for Fumiya's house. Meanwhile, we see that Natsuo went to Hina's house and found her sleeping. He told her that he came prepared, and now he wouldn't mind dying together. Hina responds that she's a failure as a teacher and an adult, but she's happy for what he just said. Natsuo says he's happy that he can finally give her a proper kiss, and they kiss again. Then he continues, but Hina stops him, saying that they shouldn't rush things. This is just the beginning between the two of them, so they don't have to hurry. The vacation ended, and the MC meets Ru and her American friend, who introduces himself a bit embarrassed to Ru, and then says he would join the literature club, where he is accepted by Kariya despite knowing nothing. Natsuo's two friends also wanted to meet him when Hina appears, and everyone treats her as usual, but she kind of ignores the MC, so he later calls her to tell her that he feels a little bad about how she behaves with him. Hina takes him to another place and tells him that she feels just as in love as he does, but acts that way for the sake of their relationship. They crouch down because the director passed by, and then they kiss. The next day, we see how these two continue to behave like a couple. The school festival arrived, and everyone had a lot of fun with its maid cafe theme. They also had a great bonfire at night. One day, while at the club, they realized that Kariya-sensei had been absent for 3 days, so they went to his apartment, which was nice to visit him. Suddenly, a girl opened the door and invited them in. She seemed to be one of his students because she called him sensei. Kariya came out, and the girl left. He explained that he had been working very hard on a novel in the past few days, and that girl was his editor. He had been feeling bad due to lack of sleep. It turns out that Kariya is actually a great novelist whom Natsuo is a big fan of. His name is Hakusuko-san. Natsuo gets really excited hearing this. Kariya said that he had revealed his writing talent to the school yet and mentioned that they recently published their novels at the festival. He saw that their work was of quality, so he asked if they would be interested in participating in a contest for new talents. The MC said he would love to participate. In class, he told Ru that he was very happy, and Ashihara-san was also content. The MC changed the subject and asked Ru if she was more relaxed now that the other girl wasn't Kuraya's girlfriend. She was very embarrassed and reacted badly, elbowing Natsuo, who fell down the stairs and injured his leg. Hina visited the MC, very worried, and Ru left the room to cook. They said they were sad because they wouldn't be able to see each other at Hina's apartment. Later, when Hina left, Ru brought food to the MC, gave him a kiss, and looked coquettishly at him, jokingly saying she was glad he fell because he had been going to Fumiya's house a lot lately and not eating well. When he returned to class, Ashihara apologized by kneeling on the floor, saying she would pay for everything and begging for forgiveness. He said it was okay, but to stand up because everyone was watching. His sick friends told him to take advantage of the situation. When he got home, he went to take a shower and Ru came behind him to help him at the request of her mother. Yes, the Japanese are strange. Then when she tried to help him in front, the MC couldn't bear it and things got very sticky. Ru went to talk to the boss as usual, who was surprised to hear her story. Ru told Fumiya that Natsuo might not come to his house for a while because he fell, but he foolishly said that he hadn't been to his house for a long time. She returned and asked the MC why he lied. He hadn't been going to Fumiya's house because he had told him so himself. Then Natsuo replied that he had been going to Momo's house to have dinner with her, but he didn't tell her because she would surely get jealous. Ru replied that when he ate there, she was left alone, so they should invite her next time. Natsuo called his friend Fumiya, who apologized because he didn't know that his friend was finally with his love. Next time, he should let him know if he's going to use his name. The next day, Natsuo is at the club looking at a photo of Hina, and Ru enters. The MC tells her that he is going to Fumiya's house today to apologize because he had lied and said he was going to his own house. But as was obvious, he ended up going to Hina's house. They shared some food and kissed passionately since they hadn't seen each other in a long time. Just when things were getting more heated, someone rang the doorbell. Hina goes to see who it is, and it's Ru, who enters and sees Natsuo. He looks disappointed and starts crying, then runs away without saying a word. Hina comes back and asks Natsuo what he told Ru when he was coming here. Natsuo says he told him he was going to a friend's house. When he returns home, his father tells him that Ru hasn't arrived yet, and suddenly Fumiya calls him, saying that Ru went to his house to pick him up since it started raining. Natsuo feels guilty, so after searching for a while, he finally finds Ru in a park. She slaps him when she sees him and then hugs him, asking why he's all dirty if he had an umbrella. He says that because he had a crutch, the umbrella fell several times. She calls him a fool for coming to look for her, and he mentions that he couldn't leave her alone. Ru says that after she went to her friend's house, she went to her own house, but when she saw that he hadn't arrived, she went into his room and read his novel, which was about a boy in love with his teacher who had a boyfriend. So if he found him at Hina's house, it would all make sense. And that's exactly what happened. So she asks him if he likes her sister, and he says yes, he's liked her for a long time. Natsuo and Ru return home, where Ru lies to her mother and says she took shelter from the rain, and Natsuo went to look for her because he was worried. The two of them go upstairs and he thanks her, but Ru closes her door without saying anything. In his room, the MC recalls what happened. Ru asked Natsuo how long he had feelings for her sister. He responded that it had been a long time even before they started living together. Ru then kissed him, saying it would be the last time. Another day, while walking to class, Ru told Natsuo that she would distance herself from him. She would only act as his sister at home and help him with his leg, but outside of that, she would stay away to try to make him stop liking her. In class, they announced a school trip was coming up, but the MC didn't seem too happy. During recess, Hina called Natsuo to her classroom and asked how Ru was since she wasn't responding to her line messages or calls. He answered that she was distancing herself from him, but he hoped it wouldn't ruin their relationship. Hina ran into Ru, but Ru didn't even greet her and just walked past her. Suddenly, in the club, the teacher entered to announce a winner, and it was Rui Takebana. The MC was a little sad. On the way out, he was walking alone when Ashihara called him, saying that she was feeling depressed. But she learned that she could use that feeling to create more and better stories, so it was something they should both use to their advantage. After this, the MC went to his teacher's house to ask to be his apprentice. Although the teacher initially didn't want to, the MC insisted, so he eventually let him in. Natsuo told him that he wanted to learn from him because he wanted to make a living writing novels. But Kiria replied that if he wanted to do it just because he thought Tachibana was more talented than him, then he could say that he was more talented than her. However, with a lot of practice, that hunger to be a novelist and make a living from it could make him succeed at some point. He just had to keep working hard on his own and he would make it. Oh, and by the way, Ru had told him that she didn't want the recognition award. The MC arrived home and congratulated Ru, but she didn't seem to be very satisfied with her achievement. In his room, he stayed thinking that he felt a little envy for what Ru had achieved. In the following days, Natsuo worked harder than before and studied the book that Korea gave him on how to write scripts and structure a story well. One day, he approached the club and gave his teacher a story he had written in a genre he hadn't touched before. He was going to write more than before, but without letting it interfere with his studies. The day of the trip arrived and everyone had a lot of fun. Was that on the day they went to the beach, Ru and Hina talked. Ru told her sister that she wanted to fix things because she finally understood that there were feelings that couldn't just end like that. And although Hina wanted to end the relationship with Natsuo to be in good terms with her sister, she told her not to do it because in the end, they would still love each other and it would be the same thing. They hug each other and seems to make amends. As the MC was walking, he saw some rings. At the same time, Hina was talking to another teacher when she received a message from Natsuo who wanted to see her today. She told him to come to her room at 7 p.m. since there would be fireworks at that time and everyone would be busy. He arrived in Hina's room and they both spoke at the same time. Hina says she wanted to break up and the MC said he wanted to get serious. He put a ring on her finger and said that he fell in love with who she was and the rest didn't matter. Suddenly the show began and the MC told her that in the future, he would buy her a more expensive ring when they got married. They went to bed together and well let him have to say what happened next. Afterward, the MC asked Hina when she started liking him. She said she liked him since she knew he kissed Ru, but she already had feelings for him when they talked on the rooftop. Hina is left astonished and says nothing, so the teachers can determine that this is real. These photos were taken by the trip's cameraman and one of the teachers noticed this detail in one of the photos. Hina kneels down and says that they can punish her however they want, but later, after all the exams, the students would go on winter vacation. Then they have a ceremony in the auditorium where they announce that a teacher will be transferred. It was Hina sensei who, unfortunately, after 2 years, was going to move to another place. The MC tries to call her, but it shows as out of service. Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Korea meets Hina to tell her that he had slight suspicions about this when he read Natsuo's novel, and now he confirmed it. This reminded him that some time ago, Shu told him one day that he was in love with his student, but there is something about feelings that, regardless of age or social position, is inevitable. Hina says that maybe if she had consulted with him, it wasn't inevitable. She couldn't have contained these feelings. Natsuo arrives at Hina's house, but he finds nothing but a letter where she says, "Natsuo, the reason I requested my transfer is that our relationship was discovered. I'm sorry for hiding it from you, but if I hadn't done it, you would have left everything for me. And I agree to transfer with the condition that no one reveals ours. So you can't come looking for me. Forget me right now and achieve your dream of being a novelist. I'm sorry you had to find out like this, but I'm a weak person. I was with you for 3 months and everything that happened to us was beautiful." Ru goes to a restaurant and comments that her sister is gone and that Natsuo didn't come home that day, and she found him in Hina's empty apartment. He hasn't gotten out of bed since then, and it's been 1 week. Fumiya, upon hearing this, goes to Natsuo's room to try to cheer him up, but as he didn't get up or say anything after seeing Hina's letter, he grabs him by the collar and throws him against the wall, telling him to get up. Doesn't he realize everything that Hina did for him, and all for him to pursue his dream of being a novelist? Natsuo tells him that he knows, but he feels helpless for not having been able to do anything. Fumiya tells him to get up to take a bath. All this is heard by Ru. Natsuo goes to his sensei's house to ask her to allow him to write a longer story because he is not in the mood to do a weekly one. The MC concentrates to the fullest and days pass while pouring all of his feelings into the novel, with Ru's help by bringing him food. There is a strong piece of news. The parents hired a private investigator to find Hina, and hinted that they were also informed about Hina's relationship with Natsuo. The days pass and Natsuo begins to recover thanks to Ru and his writing. After some time, New Year arrives and Rui asks her friends to go with Natsuo to Professor Korea's house to deliver the manuscript. Later on, the professor calls Natsuo to invite him to a literary award ceremony where he surprises him. He won the first prize for the novel he gave him. Natsuo is very surprised because he also won a good amount of money. Back at his house, Natsuo enters his room and sees someone with long hair from behind who appears to be Hina. The young man rushes to hug her intensely, but when the girl turns around, oh surprise, it's Ru with a wig. The girl leaves crying and Natsuo goes after her to her room. There, Ru confesses and tells him that she asked Momo for a wig to see how she would look with long hair, that if she previously restrained her feelings, it was for Hina, but now she would not do it anymore. What an ending!